And he was in college, had a below 2.0 GPA, was playing, as he told me, from 11 a.m., or no, it was like 8 a.m. until 3 a.m. the following day, which is played nonstop, stopped going to classes. And he realized he had a problem, and his dad was like, hey, you're flunking out of college. And he's like, I'm desperate for help, Dad, but I don't know what to do.
Cristina Quinn is a reporter at WGBH News. She recently focused on video game addiction, which was the big thing that I thought would be fun to talk to you about that we start off. But before that, you were out on assignment before you got here, right?
I was out on assignment.
What were you doing?
I was in New Hampshire, in Manchester, New
Why?
Hampshire today, working on a story that I'm not quite sure I'm ready to talk about yet, but it has to do with the upcoming election.
Okay.
And the youth. And so, but I think it'll be like a nice departure from sort of what we have been hearing a lot.
You cover a lot of stuff outside of politics. I tend to focus a lot on politics. Do you find that when the election is happening, it basically suffocates everything within the media world? Do you find that it's hard to pitch stories outside of politics?
No, I think that people and the people I work with really value stories that have nothing to do with politics or that are outside of just that constant churning of coverage that everyone's getting. And I think everyone probably here agrees that they need a break from political news and political coverage. Am I right? Yes.
Okay,
yes.
well, on that note, I'm sorry, I was that guy. I decided to bring politics into the conversation. On that note, though, tell us a little bit about, you did a whole story on video game addiction.
Yeah, so...
Is that a real term, by the way? Is that an official diagnosis?
Well, it depends on who you ask. Back in 2018, the World Health Organization had officially, designated it a legitimate disorder. Here in the U.S., that's still up for debate and sometimes a contentious one among mental health professionals. That said, there's problems. I mean, there are problems with people who are just playing for endless hours. And so I spoke with several people for this story. And it was one of the stories that I think resonated with a lot of people. Just in the building alone at GBH, people came up to me and said, I'm really glad you covered this because I know somebody. Everyone seemed to know somebody or is related to somebody who they think is addicted to video games.
What's the threshold that you have to get into before it becomes from a hobby into a serious addiction? Is there a moment people realize that, wow, this is completely taking over my life?
Yeah, so based on the people I spoke with, it's when they realize that they can't stop even though they want to.
Oh, wow.
So these are people who are desperate for help and they don't know what to do about it and they keep playing. And so I think that they recognize that they have a problem and then they don't know what to do.
Do they talk about the satisfaction that they're deriving from the game? Is there something that's in there that's making them want to keep playing? What do they think happens if they stop playing?
So this is tied to the solution, or a potential solution, a possible solution, which is part of this story. So I spoke with a number of people, and they just found themselves getting deeper and deeper. And I think for a lot of gamers, they're analytical thinkers, and so they like to take it to the next level and be challenged and continue being challenged. And what's interesting is that there is a Harvard psychiatrist named Aloks who himself had been addicted to video games. And he was in college, had a below 2.0 GPA, was playing, as he told me, from 11 a.m., or no, it was like 8 a.m. until 3 a.m. the following day, which is played nonstop, stopped going to classes. And he realized he had a problem, and his dad was like, hey, you're flunking out of college. And he's like, I'm desperate for help, Dad, but I don't know what to do.
What game was he playing?
Oh, I forget what it was. But he was
Because,
totally
if it's like Fortnite or something, come on. That's...
Yeah, well, Fortnite is like, that's like kind of at the crux of so many problems.
Is it because no one can win that game?
Yeah, because it's just like, next level.
For those of you who don't know in the crowd, Fortnite is an online video game where literally, 150 people just have to deck it out and try and kill each other. So people, I had a roommate that spent, actually, he might have been addicted to video games now that we're talking. He would spend 8 hours a day playing Fortnite matches with, I think, a lot of 13 and 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
Got into a few arguments that we're not sure We're
Right,
not
you never
sure if he
know.
really messed up some kid's trajectory in life. I came in one time and all of a sudden I heard him saying, "You're a failure and this is why no one likes you."
Wow.
I would say, I guess that you could
Yeah,
call
they
that
don't hold
addictive.
back.
They don't.
hold
Oh
back.
no, he was a merciless guy in Fortnite. Beautiful guy outside of Fortnite.
So 250 million people play Fortnite. That's
It's a country.
larger than most countries. That's
Yeah.
larger than most countries. If you think about that, just think of like a massive island of people playing Fortnite, and that's just what's going on right now.
Are
It's
governments
such a
worried
huge
about
cultural
that?
phenomenon? Are there what?
Like, if you can manage to lead the entire country of Fortnite, I feel like you can do some kind of. I mean, are people worried about that?
You know,
People talk about Facebook having 1 billion users, and you just have 250 million up on this video game.
I bet
I
if
mean,
you-
that's one video game.
I bet if you have enough money and you buy an island, and you say, "I'm going to name this island Fortnite," and people, I mean, I think it's not outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
Why you got to go there though? That's scary. That's
Why do I
dark.
have to go there?
Yeah, man, that's dark.
Well, I just like scheming. I don't know. It's
Okay, all right. So
Alok's
yeah.
not playing Fortnite. Alok is playing something.
So yeah, he was in college and he just got pulled into the he was totally hooked and he went to, and then his father sent him to India for 3 months, which you may be able to relate to.
I was sent to India for 3 months one time.
Oh.
I don't think I was in trouble, though.
Was it because you did something?
I thought it was to see my aunt, but now that you put it like that, I was playing a lot of video games at that time.
So he sent him to an ashram. So
I
he
didn't
was,
do that.
Yeah, so like he was there, he was at an ashram for 3 months, and he said like for the first 2 weeks it was brutal because he basically went from playing Fortnite for 13 hours to being in an ashram where he was forced to study yoga and meditation, and then suddenly things shifted for him, and suddenly it's like he saw the light, and he realized basically for him he just learned where desire comes from, and sort of through the yogi style of things, he understood like how to basically control his desires and all that stuff. So let's fast forward though. He comes back home, finishes college, gets his grades back up, goes to med, like
Go
gets
Alok.
Yeah, go Alok. Applies to med school, gets in. He gets into med school, and then now we're going to fast forward a little bit more. He's now a Harvard psychiatrist working at McLean. And like his goal in life is to help people addicted to video games.
So I mean, he sounded like it really had a really negative impact on him to have to admit that he was affected by video game playing. When he talks to parents and kids, is it always kids who are addicted? By the way, to
No,
video
so
games?
he has this. So he's got this startup called Healthy Gamer, and it's interesting because right now he's pretty much doing everything for free. So if you go to YouTube, you can find all of his videos. But he meets with these gamers on Twitch and Discord, where all the great gamers are hanging out, and he leads like sounded guide meditations, and has like one-on-one conversations with gamers about mental health, like really candid, open conversations about failure and why they fear failure. And
he does this while he finds people while playing games, and he has these conversations with them.
yeah. And
So someone could just be playing Fortnite, and all of a sudden they're in a conversation about about failure in
it's-
life.
No, like he holds sessions, right? So
Oh,
he'll be
okay.
on Twitch, and then, but I think so. He's garnered a lot of respect because he's a gamer, so he just knows. He speaks their language, and he's come out of it. And so, over just the past few months, he's gotten like thousands of followers on Discord and Twitch, and then he posts all these videos on YouTube. And if you go, when you go to YouTube comments, they can be pretty brutal.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting going through these comments, and you see people saying like, "This is the best thing I've ever found. I wish I had found him sooner." It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And he insists this is not a therapy program because legally you can't provide psychotherapy on the internet. But he's approaching video game addiction completely differently than one would approach substance abuse problems or alcohol addiction, and because he says video game addiction merits a completely different approach. And he says your brain gets hooked on video games in a way that's completely different to the way your brain gets hooked on drugs and booze, because it's when you're playing video games, your brain is just really happy. It's like firing off the happy thing. And what he says is that most gamers don't even realize that they have negative emotions because they're playing a game for endless hours, so they don't even know that there are negative emotions happening there.
So the video
So
game's
he's-
almost just overloading their
Yes.
entire ability to feel.
To connect
Wow.
with their emotions, so that's what he's helping them do.
Do video game companies care?
I bet they do. I'd be curious to know. I didn't reach out to video game companies about his particular approach. But what's interesting is that his approach is a departure. I mean, there are addiction centers for gamers that are out there, but they're very similar to substance abuse addiction centers. So his approach is just very different. He borrows from Eastern philosophies, but he's Harvard-trained psychiatrist, so he, is able to apply what he knows.
Do you think it's fair to call what is going on an addiction? And I'm asking you in person. I'm not asking for the scientific definition, but you talk about that difference to substance abuse disorder. Do you think that it would be fair to call this an addiction? Like, these people can't stop?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. And I spoke with a parent, and she wanted to remain anonymous, and things got really bad with her 14-year-old son. I think he was 15 years old at the time, and
you don't have to beat around the bush. You can say you talked to my mom.
So I talked to Arjun's mom, and she's like, "Please help my son."
Yeah.
And here we are.
Been there, done that.
And so, but long story short, I mean, things got pretty bad. They took his computer out of the room because I think that's sort of like the knee-jerk response to for a lot of parents is like, we're gonna take this away from you because this isn't normal. You're playing until 3 a.m. and you're lying to us. You're starting to lie to us. You're not acting like yourself. But then he ran away. And then the next night, she was worried that he was going to hurt himself, so they took him to the emergency room, and he ended up being in the hospital for almost 2 weeks.
And you're a parent, but did you do that story, and then did you think twice about if you wanted to give your kids have a video game console?
No. So my kids are 1 and 6.
Yeah.
So my 1-year-old thinks she might have a video game console, but it's,
Is it like imaginary?
Yes, yeah. It's just a notebook with buttons on it. And so
did you draw the buttons on this notebook for her?
It's just a weird notebook with buttons.
When she said, well, can she even talk?
Yeah, she can say a lot of words.
She can say, "Mom, I want video games," and you handed her the notebook.
Well, she's pretty much.
I mean, you have control over her reality right now. So.
I totally do.
Yeah.
As for my oldest, my 6-year-old, I'm already thinking, like, how do we curb it? Because she, wants to, even just with TV, right? She just wants to watch stuff. I think a lot of parents can relate to, sometimes you have to use TV to babysit your kid because you have to do a work call or you have to get, something done. And so.
When you work in TV.
Yeah, and so in a way it's like, well, I can't tell her not to watch the medium that I'm often on.
Right. Does she watch you on Greater Boston?
She does. Yeah.
Does she enjoy it?
Well, there's some stories I don't want her to see, but yeah, she likes seeing me.
Yeah. Does she like seeing Jim Browdy?
She loves Jim Browdy.
Oh, really?
Don't
tell him I said that. You?
My 1-year-old doesn't like seeing me on TV if I'm not in the room with her.
Yeah.
That really upsets her because she's like, why the hell aren't you here?
So she thinks you went into the TV.
She thinks I'm on the TV and that something is very wrong, and she gets very upset. This is what has been reported to me. She gets very upset when she sees me on screen and I'm not home, and it's just like, WTF, where's Mom? And so now they know, let's not put Mom on TV. Let's not, put Greater Boston on when Josephine's up.
So if your older one comes home and says, "Mom, everybody's playing Fortnite."
Yeah, our next door neighbor loves Fortnite. Yeah.
Do you give her the game?
We don't have it. Like, we don't have a console.
But would you entertain that idea?
I don't know. I mean, she's 6, right? So I think I gotta wait at least 4 years.
Yeah.
Until I think about it.
You get to that conversation.
Yeah, but that, you're kind of stressing me out, man, because
I know, I'm asking you a lot of parental questions.
Time flies, I don't know. Like, we already have to curb her. I mean, with the iPad, it's like, okay, you only get half an hour because I feel like it changes her. Like, her eyes glass over.
Really?
Kids get really sucked into technology.
I've always found it scary how good kids are with figuring out how iPhones and iPads work.
They're natives.
I've seen kids that lock their parents out of iPhones and iPads.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Have you ever come across anything that tells you why children are so much more apt at being able to use these devices than predominantly older people?
They're not worried about messing up. They're not worried about, because it's a very low stakes situation for them. It's not their phone, it's mine. So, and plus they're just curious. They're just really curious. This is not based on scientific research. This is based on my observation as a mom. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you report a lot on different kinds of scientific stories.
Indeed.
And what is it about science that particularly you like to continue to come back to?
I think I'm genuinely curious about stuff I don't understand. and I'm a sort of a sucker for pain, and I want to basically find out something and hurt my brain trying to understand it, and then distill it and present it to people so they understand it. The litmus for me is if my mom gets it, because English is her second language, so if she understands it, then I feel like I nailed it.
Yeah. But you did one story that was, I really like this. You didn't go, it wasn't a science story. You went back to your old middle school or high school, right?
I went to my high school.
And you met your old Latin teacher, right?
I met with my old Latin teacher. So I went to Latin Academy, which is in Dorchester, and I studied Latin. Well, we all had to study Latin, and it was great. I loved it. I can still decline stuff and conjugate if you guys want to hear that.
Yeah, go for it. Decline something.
Okay.
Do I have to give you a thing to decline?
Well, I mean, no. I'll just start with like Agricola, because that's like, Latin 101, which means farmer. Totally. In Latin. Yeah. So Agricola, Agricolae, Agricolae, Agricolam, Agricola, Agricolae, Agricolarum, Agricolis, Agricolas, Agricolis. All right, good night, guys. But
so your parents sent you to Latin school?
I went to Latin Academy.
Okay.
I went to the other Latin. So anyway,
they say Latin's a dead language. Is that true?
No. So I fell in love with it in 7th grade because suddenly the whole English language opened up to me, and I was like, this is where our language comes from. And I was like, why doesn't everyone study this? I remember just being like, this is it. Like, I remember being on a school bus and an ambulance drove by, and I was like, I know where ambulance comes from. It comes from ambulo, which means to carry. Like, come on,
that was a completely new fact to me.
That's cool, right? So.
I never really think of where words come from.
Really?
I tend to like to make up my own words.
You just
for
like
things.
to say words a lot.
I like to say them, and I tend to make up my own words to describe things. So, but that's always exciting. You go back to your old high school, you see your old teacher. Is that a weird experience?
So the reason why I went back to there is because she is in her 50th year of teaching Latin at the same school, which I think is extraordinary. She started right out of college. Her name is Janet Fillion. And she's still doing the same tricks that she was doing back when I was a student, and the same tricks that her first students were doing. And she just basically makes up songs to help her students remember conjugations and declensions. And she's just a really great teacher. And it was really fun going to my alma mater, and which I know what that means because it's in Latin.
Yes, I do not know what that means.
And,
well, I know what it means. I don't know why it means that.
And but that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you grew up in Dorchester, right?
I did.
So I always
any Dorchester folks here? I know it's a hike. Yeah. There's no parking in Cambridge. It's far.
I mean, I moved here from California. I always hear people going, "Oh, the city's changed. The city's changed. Everything's changing. We don't know." I mean, is that true? Has the city changed that it's unrecognizable?
In Dorchester?
Someone gave an audible yes just now.
Yes. I mean, the city itself.
Dorchester native? No, Roxbury. All right, that's another place around here.
Well, it's close, right? And so, it has changed a lot. I sometimes think that people who say it's changed so much, or I don't know, it's like there are too many people of color here. I kind of feel like that's sometimes something that you hear, which I think it's actually made it way better.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that. My mom's still in the same house that I grew up in, and it's like we just have like a really great. We have a great group of neighbors, We've got like a lot of Vietnamese neighbors.
Has your neighborhood changed a lot in this great transition that's apparently happened?
Not so much with gentrification, which is nice. We still have a lot of the OGs there, OGs in terms of they were there when I moved out. So that's really nice.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I love how it's changed I think it's changed for the better.
Yeah, and then you moved to Japan, right?
After college, yeah.
Yeah. What was was there a culture shock going from Dorchester out to, were you in Tokyo?
So I went right out of college. It was UMass Amherst.
Okay, so Amherst to Tokyo, right?
No, I didn't live in Tokyo. That would be...
I'm getting none of my facts right now.
Expensive rent, man. I went to Fukushima, which is about 3-4 hours north of Tokyo, in a small town region called Aizu, which is where my mom is from. And so that was cool because I basically exploited the JET program, which is like an exchange program through the consulate, to reunite with my family that I hadn't seen since I was little. And that was great because I think when I applied and I requested Aizu, people were like, wow, somebody actually requested Aizu instead of like Tokyo or Chiba, or like, we're going to give it to her. And then I show up and it's like, endless rice fields and just really, really rural.
Did you feel that you connected when you got there? Did you feel a connection with Japan?
No, I think I got there and I was like, holy crap, I minored in Japanese for 4 years, and suddenly I feel like I don't know the language.
Really?
Yes, and I was like, the good thing is I was able to read it, so I was able to like navigate my way, but it was sort of like starting from all over, because suddenly you're forced and you're immersed in a culture and you're forced to use a second language, which is so different from being in a classroom for an hour at a time speaking the language.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that connection sort of happened over time. Yeah.
And you were there for what, 2 years?
3
1 year?
years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Wow. What did you think about living there permanently?
I had, and then I realized I just couldn't swing it.
No?
I couldn't handle it. I didn't,
What was the thing that was it? Would it feel like you were limited, or?
I didn't want to be a foreigner for the rest of my life.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for everyone at some point in their life to experience what it's like to be a foreigner.
Right.
I think it's really humbling and it fosters empathy, and I just think it's something that everyone should do at some point, just to know what it's like to be in a country where no one speaks your language, and it's very humbling, and it's also just great just being exposed to a different culture.
And so, when you were in Japan, I mean, what was it was it very apparent when you would talk to other people? Did they sort of treat you like a foreigner? I mean, how did that kind of come across to you?
Yeah. So when I was there when I was little, like all the little kids would point to me and say like, Gaijin, Gaijin. When I was older, they didn't really do that as much. But I think what really blew their mind was that I'm half Japanese and I don't look it. And so it was just a really hard thing for so many people to wrap their heads around.
Yeah.
And it's like they just couldn't believe me. And that was okay. But for me, at times I'd be like, no, but really, I mean, I know how to use chopsticks. A lot of people would compliment me on my ability to use chopsticks. And I was like, but I've been using them since I was 3. And they're like, oh, that's great. But, it was just sort of like things like that took time for me to get over. But,
Yeah.
I mean, all in all,
Were you a journalist in Japan?
No, but I was teaching. So I
Okay.
was teaching high school students, often through Beatles lyrics. For some reason, that's in a lot of textbooks. Yeah, it's in a lot of textbooks. Teaching
What was like the
Kids for
song
Beatles
most
songs.
people really gravitated towards?
Hey Jude,
Okay.
which in Japanese is Hey Judo.
Okay, so
Right.
it was about the sport.
Yes, and that's what I said. I cracked that joke with them, and they're like, "Oh, American joke," and I was like, "No, it's funny.
So you're telling me my
Yes.
humor would just fall flat
It's a
in Japan.
bilingual pun, guys." And it just totally fell flat. But
So
they're
why
high
did
school
they feel
kids.
like
They're
it so
tough to
much
please.
then?
It's just
This is a good song.
Japan is captivated by the Beatles.
Really?
Captivated. It is like the whole country knows way more Beatles songs by heart than I do. And I grew up hearing Beatles on the Beatles on
Sure.
the radio. So if you go to any karaoke joint in Japan, every single Beatles song ever written will be in the book.
Did you ever uncover what was such an affinity towards the Beatles?
So it was
I say this like the Beatles are some horrible band, but
no, like what is it about
yeah,
the
why
Beatles?
are the most popular
Why?
rock band in music
Why
history?
were they so popular?
Yoko Ono, is that true?
There is a connection there. I don't really. So, okay, here's what happens. Japan is a really small country. When something popular takes off, it spreads through the country like rapid fire. And so, like, the whole country's in on a trend. And so it's amazing. It's like nothing you've ever
And
seen.
the Beatles has just never fallen out of fashion.
It's just never fallen out
What
of
are
fashion.
what were some other trends that were happening when you were there?
Oh, man. Okay. So there was this great show called Fountain of Trivia. It was like Toribio no Izumi. And the conceit of the show was that, they had a panel of judges. And there would be some sort of fascinating trivia presented to the panel of judges with a video. And it would be judged on the number of hairs that would
Number
come out
of what?
Hair. So everyone had a button, and whenever you push the button, the voice would say hair, which in Japan is like, what? Like, what? And so it would be judged based on how many hairs,
So you were judged on how surprised you were by everything?
like how amazed or blown away by this trivia fact.
Wow,
you were.
wow, it's a great
It's
game.
a great
That's a
game.
game
I'm
about
like,
appreciating
We
knowledge.
need this here. And then you'd hear there'd just be like 80 something like hey.
I mean, how do you
It was
prevent
amazing.
someone from not just pressing the button? Or is that just like the greedy American in me that it's more important to win the game than display my genuine love of knowledge?
But what would you win though? Like it's you're judging the
I don't know,
actual
what do you
whoever
win?
presents the trivia, right? So for you,
Oh, I see. I thought
satisfaction-
the contestants were the people.
no, the
pressing
judges.
button.
So you have like a panel of judges, and they judge you based on the button that they push.
So the game is you go and present neat trivia to people?
Yes, you present a fascinating trivia fact, like perhaps like the mating habits of grasshoppers. So it was also really educational, which I thought was fascinating. And then, yeah, so like there was a button, the hair button that you could buy. Like the whole country is watching this show.
It's
really
still
my
on
point.
right now?
No.
Okay.
So they don't have things like.
How did it like fall out of
Well,
fashion?
it's like another show,
Or did people just learn everything after a while?
Yeah, it's just like shows sort of like after a couple seasons. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
But I should have bought the hair button. Like there was a hair button available at a number of fine retailers, and I never bought one. And I
You
was
don't
like,
think you could still track that down?
I could probably find it on eBay, but it'd probably be like $3,000.
Yeah. Okay, so there's the cool trivia
That's a major
game
life
show.
regret for me, you guys. A major life regret.
Okay, what was another trend? Are they all kind of in this fun, whimsical fashion?
Just like if there's like a really catchy song,
Yeah.
or a very popular TV character, like TV personality, and he does like a funny dance, then like everyone's doing the funny dance.
Yeah.
Like all the students are doing the dance, and then
That
like the
sounds great.
teacher does the dance to try to like sort of curry favor from students, and then it's like your dad doing the dance. So it's just fascinating. Like wherever you go, you may travel 500 miles away from where you live, and everybody knows. Everyone's in on it.
Yeah. Is there a vibrant Japanese community here in the Boston area?
No. It's just not. I mean, you have a lot of academics who come here, or people who come here for work, and they
Yeah.
live in Cambridge and Arlington, but not in Dorchester. It would have been nice.
Yeah. I wanted to get back to something that you had reported on not
So
too
many
long ago.
questions, Arjun.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Do you have questions for me?
I will.
You got one right now? I'm happy to answer.
Have you ever lived overseas?
I was sent to India for 3 months.
Oh, that's right.
Well, I thought it was a trip to see my aunt. Apparently, it might have been to cure a video game addiction.
Apparently. But you got
Yeah,
over
I
it.
lived with my aunt in India for 3 months. We lived on a military base because my uncle's in the military.
Yep.
So I learned how to use a sniper rifle and an assault rifle. And
Nice.
yeah, it's pretty great whenever I tell people gun control comes up at work. You know where we work, depressing things come up.
Yeah.
Gun control comes up, and I'm the only one that always gets to be like, well, I mean, have you ever shot an AK-47? Yeah, it's very difficult. It was great. I loved it. I was the similar thing that you felt. It was good to connect back with people. I completely felt like a foreigner. I mean, I looked Indian the second I would
still
talk.
do.
I still do, yeah.
Yeah.
Shoot. But the second that I would talk, everyone knew exactly. So me and my aunt would go to the bazaar, and she was the greatest. I keep saying was, she still is. Is like the greatest haggler in the world, and she would literally go, "You need to be quiet the entire time you're here." And I was like, "Why?
Yeah.
Why is that? I don't like this." And she's like, "Because you'll start talking, and they'll stop haggling with us. They'll know that you're a foreigner." So that I lived there. That was probably, I would consider that the only time I've really lived abroad. I've traveled abroad a lot.
How old were you?
I was 13.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, this is a crazy story. I missed my flight in India, and I was a 13-year-old.
Oh, man.
And I was stranded in the New Delhi airport because I was going into the ticket counter. My family friend dropped me off. She's like, "Hey, have a great time.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Maybe see you sometime again." I said, "Yeah, good to see you too." And I didn't realize that the counter was changing between different airlines. And so I walked up and I said, "Hey, I'm on Air India." And they're like, "Oh, that's not this counter." I went, "Oh, okay." So I just sat there. And I don't know what I was expecting to happen.
Someone's going to come and
I
pick me up.
Yeah, I sat there and then I looked at the clock and I said, "That's funny. The plane should have taken off by now." And then I looked over and I said, "That's funny. He's taking an Air India thing off." And then it finally occurred to me that I missed my flight. And then it hit me that I missed my flight in a country that I do not speak the language, nor do I know anybody. But it all worked out. I met this guy on the street outside. He was very nice. Literally, I met a guy on the street who called my family friend.
I have your son.
Yeah, that's exactly how it worked out. See, not all people are bad.
Not all people, and you're here.
Yeah,
You're
now I'm here. Now I told
Right.
that story for the audience right now.
I'm really glad you survived
That
that.
guy enjoyed it. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
it's
More,
good.
you got more questions?
Yeah, I mean, I always have questions, Arjun. I mean, well, you want it? Do people know where you're from? Does find
My
patrons
friend
of
right
Atwood
here knows where I'm from.
That's because you guys went to high school together.
Yes.
So where were you? Was it Cupertino?
No, I did not go to Cupertino. I didn't go to the private school in Cupertino. There is a town in California called Palo Alto.
Oh,
That's where I'm
Palo
from.
Alto.
Palo Alto. Yeah. Well, you got with the perfect inflection on there.
Palo Alto. So
Yes.
are you related to Mark Zuckerberg?
Yeah, that's my brother.
Probably
Yeah.
explains it.
I call him
Okay.
Brother Zuck.
So what was it like growing up there?
Pleasant. There's a nice Panda Express.
But you must
there's
have
a
been
Jack
there
in the
for
Box.
for the evolution.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Because-
one of those things you don't really notice that it's happening at the time. I
Yeah.
mean, I think the only weird thing is I just assumed everybody's parents work in the tech industry.
Yeah.
I will say it is sometimes astonishing to come out here and see people unfamiliar with, like, we talked about the phones earlier, meeting people who are like, I don't know how this magic device works. And it's like, you press the button, that's all. I don't think it really, I think maybe looking back on it, there were some things that I could have noticed, but like Facebook's offices were literally this tiny, it was like this tiny little thing in downtown above an American Apparel store.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And now they have their own village.
Yes, they do.
It's
yes.
like- it's
and it has a
like-
weird thumbs up right in front of it, and that's it. No sign, no just a
weird.
giant like thumbs up.
That's obnoxious.
Yeah.
Doesn't Zuckerberg, doesn't he have a dentist's office in his village? Isn't
Oh,
it like
I wouldn't be, yeah.
right? There's like Facebook
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about something
Dentistry?
crazy, Google's offices have a movie theater, dorms, bikes, workout areas.
For some reason, to me, that's less creepy
Than the
than like the
dentist?
Facebook village having the having
Well,
a
because you're
dentist's
basically
office.
allowing someone who works for Facebook to operate on your teeth.
Yeah, I think that's
That
pretty
is
much
creepy.
It. Yeah. Whereas Google, it's like, of course we know how to operate your teeth. We're Google. We can just look that up right now.
Yeah, well, and then you think about Facebook and you're like, why do the people who put Candy Crush on their website have people to operate on me?
Oh man.
Yeah,
Whoa.
yeah. That was deep, right?
That was really deep. Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's the whole thing with Silicon Valley. It's very friendly on the surface, and there's a very dark, insidious side to it.
yes, there's a dark, seamy underworld.
Yeah, I mean, that's not in Palo Alto. Everything's very nice.
Okay, sure. Moving on. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you guys have sports in Palo Alto?
Sure, totally.
Was it like competitive typing?
Actually,
Competitive texting?
well, actually, now that you say that, we did have typing classes, and I was very good at this game called Math Blaster, and they created a typing version of it, and I got very competitive with that.
What does that entail?
You're a guy who's an alien, and you're trying to blast other aliens, and you have to type the words to help them shoot things.
Oh, that is good.
Oh, it was very fun.
That's
but,
actually pretty brilliant
The hard
for-
part is that my name is Arjun Singh, and so anytime I would have to put in my initials, I'd have to put in ASS, and the teacher would get very upset with me, to which I would get very upset.
Right.
And now no one's really happy.
Nobody wins there.
But at least I learned how to type.
You totally learned. And so there was a payoff in the end.
There was a payoff. I learned how to type.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was one sport.
We had that. We'd scooters. People had scooters.
Of course you did.
No, like razors, you know. People played ball
Okay.
games, you know.
Okay.
And there was like, I know there was a basketball court somewhere around. I never saw anyone playing it, but and we had a lacrosse team.
Was there competitive intermittent fasting, which seems to be a really big thing with tech bros?
Not to my knowledge. I'm not very good at that.
Yeah, I don't know how anyone could do. My blood sugar level wouldn't be able to
Yeah.
swing that.
Have
Does
you ever
anyone here?
covered
I'm
technology?
curious to know if people here are intermittent fasting. Does
Anyone?
anyone do that?
You're asking people eating dinner
I
right
don't
now.
like. That's a good point. Also, like, that includes beer. You can't drink beer if you're fasting intermittently.
So then what's the point? I mean,
don't
what are
get
you
it.
trying to do with your life there?
I think with Jack Dorsey, right? He does it. He's the owner
okay.
of the CEO of Twitter.
Yeah.
And he swears by it. But he looks hungry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He looks hungry and he looks scared all the time.
So these are the competitive sports that I think exist in Palo Alto.
I mean, I'm sure they exist in Palo Alto. Well, we have a football stadium.
Do they play? Does anyone play though?
Yeah, it's the Stanford football team. They're pretty good.
Okay, fine.
I heard Stanford has good athletics.
All right, fine. Fine.
Yeah.
Don't. Okay. We won't perpetuate the stereotype that I enjoy entertaining in my head when it comes to.
Well, you're not completely wrong on that front. That is
Good to know.
Palo Alto's the kind of town where like you'll be driving and there will be someone on those weird like one wheel
Yeah.
scooter thingies in
Oh,
front of
yeah.
you, and you're like, oh, that's normal.
I picture the roads are always freshly paved or like newly paved. There's
No,
no.
I don't think we have good town management.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Who are you
But-
going to take that up with? The mayor of Facebook Village?
Oh, I'm sure they have some tech consortium where it's like a shadow council.
Right.
I think there's a town manager. He was at the 4th of July barbecue chili cook-off once.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Just like, what is that? You know what I mean? Like, that requires a different skill set than maybe being like the town manager.
A chili cook-off? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks for that. That's enlightening.
No problem.
That's good to know.
Did you have other questions?
Yeah, they'll come to me though.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll throw it back to you.
I wanted to ask you about the guy you met who has bionic legs.
Oh, wait a minute. We haven't met yet.
Oh, okay.
Thanks for that. No, I met a woman, though, an amazing young woman who is the first Ewing double amputee. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the Ewing amputation. So it all started here, and it was named after it's named after Jim Ewing, the first person to undergo it. And up until very, very recently, amputations had not changed from, hundreds of years ago. And over at Brigham and Women's, they teamed up with scientists at MIT's Media Lab, the robotics biomechatronics lab, and basically when they do the Ewing amputation, they reconnect all the nerves. And so when you think you're moving an ankle, like your body still thinks your ankle is there, which may sound terrifying, but the reason why it's a great thing is that it sets the stage for them to wear prosthetics that are robotic. And so you can control your robotic leg just by thinking about it like you would with if you had a real leg. And so far, there have only been about 20 people who've undergone the Ewing amputation, and I met this young woman, Morgan Stickney, who's extraordinary. And she just had her second leg amputated back in fall, unfortunately, and it was sort of devastating because she started out as an Olympic-bound swimmer, and then she had to get her leg amputated about over a year ago. And then it turned out she had a rare vascular disease that made her bones brittle. So she thought, okay, I'm going to go to the Paralympics. And literally within months of having her first amputation, she won 2 gold medals in the Paralympics, championships, 2 national championships, and then broke her other ankle, and then realized it was the same situation. She had to get another amputation just this past October, but that has not deterred her, and she's just saying, okay, I'm going to be in the I want to go to the Paralympics in 2024. I'm just being a different category. But she's working with these scientists over at MIT's Media Lab, and they are having her test out these robotic legs. And she's one of like a group of 20 people who are getting these robotic legs fitted just for themselves that they will be able to control with their mind.
Do you think that's ever going to be scalable?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it probably won't be available commercially for at least another 5 years, but we could definitely see it as early as 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Maybe 7. And it's really amazing. I mean, if you see the videos of, you can see it online at WGBHnews.org, the video of her using her robotics legs, just testing them out. And
I think it's news.wgbh.org.
I said news.org. Okay. Whatever. So, yeah, but it's just pretty extraordinary to see this happening.
Yeah.
And it's happening right here. So,
I mean, how do these stories come to you? I mean, you're talking about video game addiction, bionic legs, any number of fascinating yet obscure things. How do you seek those stories out? How do you find these people to talk about?
From a number of places. I don't have a formula. I kind of wish I did, but maybe that's part of like why it's always kind of fun.
Yeah.
I go down rabbit holes on Reddit, and so I think that's how I came across the video game story. Was just I went down a rabbit hole about and I think I may have even I was looking at video games, and then I may have even looked up video game addiction for some reason because I had a conversation with somebody. I actually wish I remembered the origin story, and then I went down this rabbit hole on Reddit, and I came across a post from this doctor from like 10 years ago, oddly enough, when he wasn't a doctor, and then I sort of just went from there. And then as for the robotic bionic legs, I had struck a relationship with Morgan. I'd met Morgan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just, there was talking to people, and just sort of always being curious and willing to go read things that you really wouldn't be reading, and going down research rabbit holes. That can be kind of fun.
What's your favorite subreddit?
Oh, man.
I have mine, so.
What's yours?
It's called No Sleep. It's a scary story subreddit, but it's cool because it's a good community.
I know about No Sleep.
No, but what I like about No Sleep, and maybe what you found on Reddit, is that you find these really supportive groups of people, and it's like you go on and it's just a silly, scary stories Reddit, But everyone is so supportive of everybody else in that community. They're like, this was a great story. You should really do more with this. And some of them got turned into a TV show. So I came for the scary stories. I stayed for the community.
I don't know if I have a favorite subreddit, but No Sleep is really good.
Yeah.
/ terrifying.
There are some good writers on there.
There are, yeah.
Some also terrible ones, but
Maybe I can go there and be discovered.
Yeah.
With some terrifying No Sleep story.
well, while you're thinking of your favorite subreddits, we do take questions from the audience. Can I ask you a question from the audience?
Yeah, sure.
So this is from Anonymous.
Oh, okay.
They would like to know, have you ever been in Gin Blossom's music video? I don't know what Gin Blossom's in. It sounds like a delicious drink.
What? Wow. Really? How old are you?
We don't have to go there.
We don't have to go there. However, I feel like in the canon of pop music and rock music,
Ronald, I don't know what it's like for Reagan
the
to
Gin
have been
Blossoms
president.
are a well-established band of the 90s. And as it turns out, yes, I was in a Gin Blossoms video. Thank you, Anonymous, for asking that question.
It's the same one who wrote that op-ed in the New York Times, I think.
Oh, it's good to know. So, yes, it was in a song called As Long As It Matters, and it came out in like 96. And most of the video was filmed in Boston, and then at the River Rave, at, which I think it's called, well, it used to be the...
Was this part of that old Boston
Greatwoods.
that's everything's changed and now it's gone?
No, because it was at the... I think part of it was... so the Boston stuff was filmed in Savin Hill and in Kenmore Station.
Okay.
And just around Boston, and then at Greatwoods, when I had to pretend that I was a really big Gin Blossoms fan, which was hard.
Were
That
you
was
not a
acting.
fan of the band
I
for
was
being in
not-
their
no,
video?
I was
What were
not.
you doing in their video?
It was a gig. I got hired to be in the video.
That's
and,
cool.
And it was kind of like, I remember being like, oh, that's too bad I'm not a big fan of theirs, because then that would be really awesome. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
You know
no,
what I mean? Like-
absolutely.
like, I
Oh,
wish
no.
I was like, I wish I
I'm
was-
sorry, I didn't mean. I feel like I didn't mean to give you this like judgmental look. Like
I just wish but for me, like I was in high school and it was like, this is amazing. And we were backstage at Greatwoods and I saw all these bands that I was a fan of and I saw Lenny Kravitz and it was amazing.
that's. I mean, I get
you
that.
know-
I worked on a grilled cheese truck. I don't really like grilled cheese.
Oh, so you know what it's like.
Oh, I completely know what it's
Yes.
like. Except, was it like having burning grilled cheese all around you?
Kind of, but to my ears. Yeah.
So did they just play the song on repeat and repeat and repeat?
No, we had an Italian director, and he told us we had an Italian director who kept telling me to feel things, and he's like, just you're a young woman who is really cold on the outside, but inside you are very vulnerable, and I want you to feel that.
That's what they said about you?
That was his direction for my character.
That's good direction.
in the video.
I feel like I understand that person now.
And so that's who I was in the video. But if you watch the video, it makes no sense.
So how do you do that how do you do that visually? Can you give us an example of how you be that person without making noise?
Okay, so there's one scene where I'm in Kenmore Station,
Yeah.
and I'm running, and I'm sort of banging against the brick wall, like running, like I can't even run straight. But I was also wearing like really high platform heels.
I mean, that sounds like Kenmore Station.
It was impractical. right. Like, I'm just like, get me, somebody, like, why wasn't this trolley running? So I'm running and I can't run straight, and I'm banging up against the brick wall, and then I make it onto the trolley, which is conveniently empty, and then somehow I make it to the roof of where the Sitco sign is, and that's makes me happy, and that's really where the video ends. Is that I'm not the only character in this, by the way. There are like 5 of us. It's all very confusing.
Yeah.
And I'm looking up at the Sitco sign, and for some reason that solves the problem.
course.
Whatever torment is going on, it solved it. So
Well, I'm glad that the Sitco sign was your savior.
thank God for the Sitco sign. But for me, for like 16-year-old me, that was pretty amazing to be on the roof of that building. The whole experience, really. Although it was very silly.
Can I ask you another question from the
Absolutely.
audience? This one is from Jeremiah, and he would like to know, what is the driving factor of video game addiction now versus 20 years ago? Internet-enabled games, the main cause of them?
That is a really good point, Jeremiah. So streaming video games are only going to grow more and more. I think the statistic is like 27% a year every year for the next 6 years, and they're just going to be more accessible and available and more affordable. And so I think just the accessibility point is is connected to the fact that, everybody is able to get on and play for as long as they can, so long as you have internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I tie this into Slitz's question of, do you think it's a part of a larger problem of screen addiction?
I do. I think it's connected. I
Yeah.
think it's, there's something about technology that we just don't really know. We don't know what to do. And actually, so the doctor that I interviewed, because I was asking him about this, and he said that we need to approach technology addiction in a completely different way. But it
Yeah.
certainly merits a lot of attention, because even myself, I'll be on my phone. When I don't even think about it, I'll like pick it up. It's now becoming sort of like this
I think
habit.
this interview is the longest I've not been looking at a screen in the last week since I was up here with Callie. But it is scary. It's hard because for us at WGBH, we
Well, we
can't
work in
not use our
news.
screens. We
Yeah.
literally look at computer screens when we're not out in the field. When you got into journalism, did you see that technology changed things a little bit? You were already there when a lot of the internet and computers were being used, but I feel like in the last 5 years, and particularly with Google, things have become really ramped up to a point where if you're producing a radio show, you're half calming the host, half a Google monkey.
Yeah, no, I think that's, like Google's been around really since I've started.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to even think of doing this job without a search engine. However, it's really interesting that you just said something like,
Was it Google monkey?
that really struck with me. No, like when I'm out in the field interviewing people, that is when I'm not checking my phone, because
Yeah.
it's a really, you're connecting with people. So like, it's just, there's something to be said there. It's like when you're connecting with people, you won't look at your phones. And, maybe we just need to make a greater effort to do that.
Yeah.
Yes. Like right now.
Everyone can have their own interview series.
Everyone should have their own interview series.
Well, Liz wants to know, what do you think about babies and young children essentially being co-parented by screens? You talked about that a little bit earlier with the TV.
Yeah, so I think it's a slippery slope, and one that in my home we try very hard to be diligent about. Like, I'm always keeping an eye on the clock just to know, like, okay, like, how long has she been watching this? And I always make it a point to make sure that's like, okay, if it's PBS Kids, she's learning something, like, that'll be my argument. But I understand, like, I'm realistic about the demands of parents' schedules and demands of working parents. If they're working from home, some days they need to sort of just put the TV on, for an hour and let their kid watch it. But I know it's hard because, it's tough. Sometimes, you just can't. It's hard to keep an eye on the clock all the time.
Well, it seems like it's difficult to tell your kid to not take part in something that you are also actively taking part in.
Right. And the other thing, too, is, like, if there's a show that they want to talk about with their friends or,
Right.
For me, it's just like, well, as long as if they're learning something, I'm okay with it. But it's...
Have you found, does that happen a lot with your kids, that they don't necessarily want to do something like watch a TV show, buy a video game, but the peer pressure they feel from school? Is there a big screen culture at their school that they kind of are getting wrapped up in?
No, not at my daughter's school. Not yet, anyway, but she's in the first grade.
Yeah.
So she might find herself being pulled in second grade. Come second grade.
That's when it all starts.
It all goes downhill from there.
That's when Facebook came out in our hometown. Woodley would like to know, how did you go from teaching to your current role at WGBH?
Oh, yeah. So while I was in Japan, I studied journalism. I was a journalism major in college. But while I was in Japan, I got asked to host a radio show called Let's English. And I remember talking to the station manager saying, that's not grammatically correct, and he didn't understand English, and he said, it doesn't matter, I like the sound of it, we're gonna call it Let's English. And I'm so glad he stuck with it, because it really is catchy. And so, and then every week, it'd be like, Let's English, and then it was actually my first time producing. I'd never done this before. I'd never produced for broadcast. I'd never done anything in radio.
I feel like they just threw you in on like the coolest show ever.
Yeah, it was definitely the coolest show ever. And it was really funny though. He's like, I want you to read civic announcements in English, slowly, for our listeners who don't understand English, so maybe they can pick up some English. And I remember thinking, like, because I had been teaching English at the time, thinking, like, that's not going to work. Like, this isn't how you teach English. And but I did what he asked me to do. And then after a while, I realized, like, this is really strange. Because I was reading about, like, if you need to get your baby vaccinated, next Thursday, there are going to be vaccinations. It was just bizarre.
Those
like,
were the
but I
things
was
you would
saying it
read?
even more slowly. What's
Yeah,
that?
those were the things you would teach people.
Yeah, they were
to
just like
learn?
local civic announcements, and then I just decided to change it.
Yeah.
Because I was like, he doesn't know what I'm saying, so I'm going to take advantage of this and make this a completely different show. So what I started doing was I would just make the announcements like I would, and then I started producing my own show called Word Up, and it was I was talking about my experience as a foreigner in Japan, and that was my first taste of producing.
Yeah. And to answer Woodley, your other question, I moved to Massachusetts because I need to go to school.
Yeah.
I feel that's a common reason people come out
Yeah,
here.
a lot of people come here to learn.
To learn. And I did. You moved to Japan to learn, I came here
Yeah.
to learn.
We all want to learn.
Very similar experiences. Another person wanted to ask about your Gin Blossoms music video.
Oh, wow. Really? Wow. Yeah.
Anonymous again, funny
Oh,
enough.
fascinating.
Okay, favorite news story, not impeachment or the Democratic primary. I feel like that was
you know
targeted
what?
to me.
It was funny. I was like, I wonder if someone's going to ask me that, because I don't know.
Callie stumbled on it too, so don't worry.
Well, because we're just flooded with information, right? And
Yeah.
So favorite news story I've worked on, or favorite news story in general?
How about worked on?
Okay, that I've worked on. Oh, man, it really depends. I mean, some stories you get like a larger sense of satisfaction out of it because it's like, oh, this might affect change, or like, I think because it's fresh in my memory, like the video game story really struck a chord with a lot of people, and it was, so it's good to know that this might help people. But interviewing my Latin teacher was a lot of fun. And, they can't all be heavy hitters, guys, because, you got to mix it up a bit, and that was just deeply satisfying. I don't know. I think that's really all I can come up with right now, because I've been doing this for so long.
Well, that's a great segue into something that has nothing to do with it, but I didn't. This is a very interesting question. Did you attend BLA at the same time as the co-founder of Airbnb?
No.
He went to your school?
He went to my school, and he graduated. Yeah, he's younger than me. He graduated after I did. But I thought that was fascinating. Who knew? It was fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no.
So now you know what it's like to grow up in Palo Alto now. This one, I think, this is a good one. From what you've learned about screen addiction, has it taught you how to suggest dealing with coworkers who are constantly checking their phones? I mean, to me, has it altered the way you think about it? Really bothers me if I'm having a conversation and someone starts flipping out their phone, texting during it. But I myself am guilty of that. Has it made you, I guess, in a way, more empathetic to people like that?
In the workplace, I kind of give them a pass.
Yeah.
I think in my personal life, yeah, I like to draw the line and be like, hey, let's not look at our phones. Like if my husband and I go on a date, like we don't take out our phones. Like,
is that a rule, or is that something
rule,
that naturally kind of
comes out? It's just sort of like an
out?
unspoken, like, hey, let's actually enjoy our time together, without being disrupted by something that's like feels like it's often disrupting. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
Phone calls, emails, yeah. So, but it's not a written rule.
I think
can
that's
see
the
though.
hard
I
part.
can see
It's
some
not
people do.
malicious necessarily,
Yeah.
but it is annoying.
Yeah, right. It is annoying.
Yeah.
It does feel like they're not paying attention to you. I can understand that. Yeah.
Liam has a question that I don't know if you're going to be able to answer it, but I would. Oh, actually, Liam's question is for me, but I'm going to give it to you anyway.
Okay. That's fair.
What's your favorite scary story? The one that keeps you up at night?
No. I don't like that one either. I don't like scary
We know,
stories
Liam.
either, man. No, Liam, I'm with you. I can't stand horror. I feel like the world is terrifying enough in so many ways. Like
Yeah.
the last thing I want to watch is a horror movie.
Really?
Yes.
But you think that's because you find the world so overwhelming?
I think that there's so much, like there's enough misery out there that's easy to find and come across when I'm reading the news. And that like, yeah, I don't like being scared. Like I don't find being scared a fun thing. Yeah, I'm just like, and like I don't like seeing lots of blood.
No,
you
that
know?
I get. That I get.
However, I have seen The Shining countless times.
And
so
there's an entire
there's an elevator
pool.
full of
Yeah,
blood.
elevator. I said
But I
pool for
feel like
some
that's a
reason.
classic. That's there's something different about that
That's
film.
good. That's the good kind of blood.
But you know what?
You
I'm
want
not-
blood coming out of an elevator. If you're gonna have to see blood flowing anywhere.
I think. I think it's I mean, it was really impressive, wasn't it?
Technically, very. I mean, the man shot the moon landing, according to some people.
I think yeah, I think psychological thrillers are like, you know, where there's
Yeah.
like horror mixed with like, you know, like the mind of a
That's
psycho.
that's
stuff.
what I find interesting.
Really? What do
Yeah.
you like?
I like What's that? That is a horror story in and of itself. Yeah, I mean, no, I like the suspenseful stuff. I don't like the serial killer, all of that. I
The
like
movie Seven still haunts me.
Yeah, that's a creepy movie.
And I haven't watched that movie in like 15 years, and that movie will haunt me for the rest of my life.
You're always wondering what was in that
What
box.
was in the box? We know what was in that box.
I think that's up to debate.
I think we know what was in that box.
Christina, did you come up with any more questions for me? You said they were going to be coming for you. I'm prepared.
Oh man, I mean, gosh, where do we begin? Okay, so I have a question about. Well, God, I mean, Arjun. We talked about where you're from.
Yep.
We talked about where you've been.
Yes.
Where are you going next?
Oh, where am I going next? I was thinking of going to Lone Star. Where am I going next with my life, or where am I going next after I get out of here?
It's really up for your interpretation.
Okay.
I'm not going to go down hard on you here.
I think the next place I'd like to go is Germany.
Ooh.
I went to Berlin one time for work, and I really loved it there. I'd like to explore the rest of the country.
I've been to Berlin.
It's a great city.
Yeah,
it's a really cool city.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I'd like to go next as for a destination.
Okay.
Where I'd like to go with my life is also up for interpretation.
All right. All right. That's good enough for me.
Okay. Well, that ends up for audience questions, and I think I'm kind of ran out of questions for you as well, Christina. But thank you so much for coming by tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
This
folks,
was fun.
thanks for sticking around tonight. Thanks for coming by. We're doing this again next week when we're doing it again next Tuesday.